president deserves the support of the Black community because he's earned it.
There is a silent majority of us that see you, see what you're doing, see what you did for HBCU schools. That was actually the deal for us.
I wager to say that there is no American president since Lincoln that has had the impact for Black America that President Trump has had.
Joe Biden supported the crime bill in '94.
He has imprisoned Black America, basically.
Trump supported the NAACP and Black youth like myself in '87.
He's a businessman. He's bringing businesses back into America.
Bringing jobs back to America.
Bringing the truth back, and he's stopping needless wars.
My day is going to be amazing. I'm never going to forget this day. This day is historic.
In 2016, I made you a solemn pledge. I would be your greatest champion. In the first 3 years, we achieved the lowest Black unemployment rate in history. We achieved the largest job gains for African Americans on record. The poverty rate for African Americans reached the lowest level ever recorded. I did more for the Black community in 47 months than Joe Biden did in 47 years.
We cannot deny that that man has done everything that he has set out to do in record-breaking time. Can we say 3 years? Can we say 3 years?
We will create 3 million new jobs for the Black community. Open 500,000 new Black-owned businesses.
What is America's destiny? What is best for our nation, our people? What is just, true justice? We have to think about all these things together as a people. To contemplate our future, to live up to our dream, we must have vision. We as a people will revive our nation's commitment to faith, to what our Constitution calls the free exercise of religion, including, of course, prayer. Through prayer, faith can be restored. We as a people are called to a greater purpose than ourselves. We are not only a beacon to the world, but we should be servants to each other, to encourage each other, to help each other, to lift up each other, our fellow Americans, that we may all prosper together. We have to act on faith.
Every day.
Well, they're losing their lives everywhere in the world. And maybe that's a question you should ask China. Don't ask me, ask China that question, okay? When you ask them that question, you may get a very unusual answer. Yes, behind you, please.
Sir, why are you saying?
Okay, anybody else? Please, go ahead in the back, please.
I have two questions.
No, it's okay.
But
We'll
you
go over
pointed
here.
to me. I have two questions, Mr.
Next,
President.
next, please.
But you called on me.
I did, and you didn't respond, and now I'm calling on
Sorry, I just
the
wanted
young
to
lady in the back, please.
I just wanted to let my colleague finish.
Okay.
But can I ask you a
Ladies
question,
and gentlemen,
please?
thank you very much. Appreciate it. Our nation has been gripped by professional anarchists, violent mobs, arsonists, looters, criminals, rioters, Antifa, and others. A number of state and local governments have failed to take necessary action to safeguard their residents.
There's been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like you've never seen.
He wouldn't know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not.
So much
Go ahead. Wait a minute.
I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car. are as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. Yeah. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means...
let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police offices. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking about. He's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support.
Look,
he has no law enforcement
That's not
support.
true.
Almost nothing.
Look.
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead.
Look,
think. We have time.
We don't have time to do anything.
No, think about it. Name one law enforcement group that came out and supported
gentlemen,
you.
I think I'm going to take back the moderator's role, and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is, as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted, and anyone who commits it.
But you've never called for the people, the leader. Excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Here's the thing.
I sent in the U.S. Marshals to get the killer of the young man in the middle of the street. They shot him, and for 3 days,
President Trump,
Portland wouldn't do anything. I had to send in the U.S. Marshals. They took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, you know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that. And so here's the But here's the point. The point is that that's what he keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, and every single solitary time.
And to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly criticized.
I have to answer his statement.
No, you have repeatedly. No, you've been talking back and forth.
You made a statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to end it.
Sir,
I would love to end it.
You know, if you want to switch seats.
We could very quickly.
We could do that, but
I'd send in the National Guard. It would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland.
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do
specifically
that, but
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Who would
white
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
FBI director
This
said
is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Evidence shows that officers both knocked and announced their presence at the apartment. The officers' statements about their announcement are corroborated by an independent witness who was near in a proximity to apartment 4. In other words, the warrant was not served as a no-knock warrant. When officers were unable to get anyone to answer or open the door to apartment 4, the decision was made to breach the door. After breaching the door, Sergeant Mattingly was the first and only officer to enter the residence. Sergeant Mattingly identified 2 individuals standing beside one another at the end of the hall, a male and a female. In his statement, he says that the male was holding a gun, arms extended, in a shooting stance. Sergeant Mattingly saw the man's gun fire, heard a boom, and immediately knew he was shot as a result of feeling heat in his upper thigh. Kenneth Walker fired the shot that hit Sergeant Mattingly, and there is no evidence to support that Sergeant Mattingly was hit by friendly fire from other officers. Mr. Walker admitted that he fired 1 shot and was the first to shoot. In addition to all the testimony, the ballistics report shows that the round that struck Sergeant Mattingly was fired from a 9mm handgun. The LMPD officers fired 40 caliber handguns. Sergeant Mattingly returned fire down the hallway. Mattingly fired 6 shots. Almost simultaneously, Detective Cosgrove, also in the doorway, shot 16 times. This all took place in a matter of seconds. In total, 6 bullets struck Ms. Taylor. Medical evidence obtained by our team indicates that only 1 shot was fatal. Further medical evidence shows that Ms. Taylor would have died from the fatal shot within a few seconds to 2 minutes after being struck. Detective Hankinson fired his weapon 10 times, including from an outside sliding glass door and through a bedroom window. Some bullets traveled through apartment 4 and into apartment 3 before some exited that apartment. At the time, 3 residents of apartment 3 were at home, including a male, a pregnant female, and a child. There is no conclusive evidence that any bullets fired from Detective Hankinson's weapon struck Ms. Taylor. The KSP ballistics analysis did not identify which of the 3 officers fired the fatal shot. After receiving that information, I asked the FBI crime lab to conduct its own analysis to see if they reached the same results. The FBI ballistics analysis concluded the fatal shot was fired by Detective Cosgrove. Our office looked at both reports to determine if there were major differences in the procedures used by each lab that would have led the FBI to identify who fired the fatal shot. Both law enforcement agencies use similar equipment and analysis, and each lab is highly respected for their work. There was nothing our investigators could point to, nor anything provided by the respective agencies that directly explains why one lab made the call while another did not. I think it is worth repeating again that our investigation found that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in their use of force after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker. Secondary to this justification, the KSP and FBI ballistics analysis reached different conclusions. creating a reasonable doubt in the evidence about who fired the fatal shot.
Dominate the streets. You can't let what's happening happen. It's called dominate the streets. You can't let that happen in New York, where they're breaking into stores and all of the things. And by the way, hurting many small businesses. You can't let it happen. Equal justice under the law must mean that every American receives equal treatment in every encounter with law enforcement, regardless of race, color, gender, or creed. They have to receive fair treatment from law enforcement. They have to receive it. We all saw what happened last week. We can't let that happen. Hopefully George is looking down right now and saying this is a great thing that's happening for our country.
It says, make America great again. These are people that love our country. I have no idea if they're going to be here. I was just asking. But I have no idea if they're going to be here. But MAGA is make America great again. By the way, they love African American people. They love black people. MAGA loves black people.
Of those who are spreading violence in our cities are supporters of an organization called Black Lives Matter, or BLM. It's really hurting the black community. It's hurting the black community. This is an unusual name for an organization whose ideology and tactics are right now destroying many black lives, and whose first phrase was, you remember this, pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon, referring to our police. That's referring to our police. The stated goal of BLM organization people is to achieve the destruction of the nuclear family, abolish the police, abolish prisons, abolish border security, abolish capitalism, and abolish school choice. That's what their stated goals are. Biden believes that all black Americans have to think the same way. That's what it was all about. Today's Democrat Party is run by, he doesn't know black Americans like I do. That I can tell you. Over the last 50 years, black Americans have mostly voted Democrat, but every day more black Americans are deciding that the old way is not working. 5 decades of evidence prove that Democrat politicians do not care about the black community. They only care about power for themselves, whatever that means. My opponent is offering black Americans nothing but the same old, tired, empty slogans. By the way, he's staying in again today. The guy. Hey, champ, if I lose to a guy that's like you losing to a fighter that, hasn't worked out in the last 6 months. This guy's never going.
And by the way, what you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
You know, the rapidly rising
Climate change affects every single solitary one of us. But too often, the brunt falls disproportionately on communities of color, exacerbating the need for environmental justice. Sorry, as a bug. Speaking of the environment. Oh, no, we need teachers. My wife is a full-time teacher, taught all during when we were vice president. But if Donald Trump is reelected. So people are figuring out there's not a damn thing we can do that we set our mind to that we can't get done. The single most stressed I was asked to speak to the American Psychiatric Association, to go over to the University of London and speak to the World Psychiatric Association. We provide efficiency for appliances. That saves billions of gallons of gasoline. I mean, billions of $2.3 billion worth of, $500 billion in savings and 2-something billion metric tons of CO2 going.
Pandemic. The pandemic is that the president has no intercourse whatsoever with the rest of the world on dealing with these things.
Not those of us running for president alone, not just activists like you. The reason I did what I'm doing is because there's an invasion of Hispanics. And
what they call the moonshot, dealing with cancer. And something after that set up the Biden Cancer Initiative. And here's the point. My wife, who is a teacher, she's teaching now. She's back in the classroom at a community college where she teaches in Northern Virginia. As well as addiction recovery. And so one of the things that, and by the way, this whole notion of dealing with the idea that, look, more vets, because if you could take care, if you were a quartermaster, you can sure in hell take care of running a...
So to everyone keeping up the fight, you are doing something. You are doing something great. You are the heroes of our time. Let's believe in a more perfect union without mass incarceration of African American men. And where we all recognize the truth, Black lives do matter.
9 times out of 10, right now, your mom is in my kitchen butt naked cooking grits.